The seats were empty. The air was still. But the echo of applause lingered, sharp, hollow, as if dozens of unseen hands were clapping in the dark. In the Appalachian Mountains, tucked into a quiet hollow where fog rolls like restless spirits, stands a theater long forgotten by time. Its brick facade is cracked. Its marquee letters are missing. Weeds claw through the steps where crowds once gathered. But if you linger too long outside, you might swear you hear laughter. A curtain rising, a stage being set for a performance that never ends. Locals call it cursed. Travelers call it haunted. But to those who know its history, it is something far worse. This is the story of the Appalachian Haunted Theater, where performances from the past are still being played and the actors are no longer alive. The theater was once the pride of a mountain town, a shining jewel when coal money flowed and railroads brought strangers from far away. People would dress in their finest clothes, climb those wide stone steps, and settle into plush red velvet seats to watch traveling troops perform. Opera, plays, vaudeville acts. The theater was alive with voices, music, and the hum of excitement. But beauty doesn't last in the mountains. Coal veins ran dry. Families moved on, and the theater, like the town around it, fell quiet. Except, of course, for the whispers. They say if you press your ear against the locked wooden doors, you'll hear someone warming up their voice, humming scales in the dark. If you peek through a broken window, you might see the shadow of a stagehand moving across the catwalks. And if you're unlucky enough to step inside, you'll hear it, faint, unnerving, the sound of the curtain ropes creaking, as if the stage is preparing itself for another show. A show no living soul was meant to see. On stormy nights, truck drivers passing through swear the building flickers with light. The old marquee, broken for decades, glows faintly, and if they lower their windows, they claim to hear a muffled voice, an announcer, booming across the empty parking lot. Ladies and gentlemen, the show is about to begin. Of course, most people laugh at the stories. They say it's just wind, or old pipes, or locals trying to scare outsiders. But in Appalachia, legends have a way of holding on. And no matter how much people scoff, no one volunteers to tear the place down. No construction crew will touch it. And those who try to reopen it, they never lasted long enough to finish. One man, a restorer from out of town, was hired years ago to fix the roof. He lasted 3 nights before leaving in the dead of morning. He never told the townsfolk what happened, only muttering that he wouldn't step foot in that place again for all the money in the world. The tools he left behind are still there, rusting quietly in the wings. If you walk through the theater today, the air is heavy with mold and dust. Rows of broken seats stretch into the shadows, each one seeming to watch you as you pass. The stage is scarred by fire, its once shining wood blackened and cracked. Above it hangs the curtain, tattered gray, yet somehow swaying, even when the air is still. And then there's the balcony. Always the balcony. No one sits there now, yet those who dare to enter claim they feel eyes watching from above. A hush falls over the theater, like an audience waiting for the show to start. And then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing across the empty balcony as though someone invisible is taking their seat. It's here, in this Appalachian hollow, where silence feels like an audience holding its breath, waiting for the curtain to rise once more. And the question that chills every bone, when the performance begins, who exactly is the audience? The Appalachian Haunted Theater didn't always wear the mask of ruin. When it first opened in the early 1900s, it was the jewel of the mountain town of Ash Grove Hollow. Coal money built it. The richest families poured their fortunes into the bricks, the marble columns, and the glittering chandeliers. They wanted the mountains to feel like New York, or maybe even Paris. For a while, they succeeded. The opening night was legendary. Men in press suits, women in dresses that shimmered under gaslight. A brass band played as the crowd filled the seats, the smell of cigars and perfume mixing in the air. The curtain rose, and the crowd erupted. For a town surrounded by dark woods and hard labor, the theater felt like another world, a portal to music, color, and imagination. But Appalachia never lets glamour last for long. The stories of what went wrong depend on who you ask. Some say the first tragedy came with a touring opera. The lead soprano, a woman with a voice said to be heaven-touched, collapsed mid-performance. Her body hit the stage with a sickening crack. The audience gasped, but when they rushed forward, she was already gone. Others whisper about the fire. One night, the theater was packed to the brim for a vaudeville show. Jokes, dances, music filling the rafters. No one knows exactly how it started. Some claim an oil lamp tipped. Others swear someone saw a shadowy figure in the wings, striking a match. But the flames spread fast. Panic followed. The curtain went up in fire. The wooden stage cracked and hissed. People screamed, clawing at one another to reach the exits. When it was over, the fire department pulled 17 bodies from the ashes. Performers, musicians, members of the audience. Their faces charred, their clothes burned, but their eyes, open, staring, locked on the stage as if they hadn't stopped watching the show. After the fire, the theater reopened. But it was never the same. The velvet seats smelled of smoke, no matter how many times they were scrubbed. The boards of the stage creaked like bones. And the chandelier, though polished until it shone, dripped wax from candles that no one had lit. The town grew quiet, the coal veins thinning, the families moving away. The theater, once the pride of Ashgrove Hollow, became more of a burden, but stayed open. For decades, small acts came through. Traveling performers, local musicians, school plays. And though audiences thinned, the building refused to die. But people whispered, always the whispers. A violin heard long after the musicians had gone. Footsteps running backstage with no one to follow them. And during one school play in the 1950s, a child froze midline, staring into the wings. When asked what she saw, her voice was trembling. There's someone back there. They're burned. The adults laughed nervously, but no one dared look behind the curtain. By the 1970s, the theater closed for good. Too expensive to run, too dangerous to repair. Rain leaked through the roof. Rats nest in the walls. And yet, when the final crew locked the doors and left, the people of Ashgrove Hollow felt something stir. The silence in town deepened, and more than once, passers-by swore they heard the faintest sound of applause coming from within. It was as though the theater itself refused to be forgotten. Its tragedies too heavy, its history too scarred, the performances unfinished. And so the legends grew. The burned woman who still sings at midnight. The audience who never left their seats. The stagehands who keep the ropes ready, waiting for the next show. The Appalachian Haunted Theater was no longer just a building. It had become a stage for the dead. And decades later, when a group of outsiders tried to bring it back to life, they discovered the past wasn't finished with them. Not yet. By the early 2000s, the theater was more ruined than landmark. Its brick walls leaned. Its roof sagged. Locals walked past it quickly, heads down, as though acknowledging it gave the building power. But outsiders? They saw opportunity. A group of graduate students from a nearby university heard the legends and thought the theater would make the perfect subject for a documentary. Haunted buildings were a trend. Ghost hunting shows were popular. If they could capture something real in Ashgrove Hollow, it could launch their careers. So they came, with cameras, audio recorders, and a nervous excitement that only deepened as they saw the theater for the first time. The first thing they noticed was the silence. Not just quiet, but hollow, as though the building absorbed every sound. Even their footsteps felt muted as they climbed the cracked marble steps. Inside, dust hung thick in the air, catching in their throats. Their flashlights cut through rows of broken seats. The red velvet was eaten by moths, the stuffing spilling out like open wounds. Still, they pressed forward, whispering into their cameras, describing the decay. Their voices trembled more than they expected. The stage loomed before them, blackened boards scarred by fire. Above, the curtains swayed gently. They froze, shining their lights up at it. The air was dead still, yet the curtain moved, slow, deliberate like a breath. One of them laughed nervously, trying to explain it away. Old fabric, air currents, nothing strange. But the others didn't believe it. Not really. They began setting up equipment. Motion sensors, digital recorders, cameras. One student volunteered to climb to the balcony for a wide shot. She ascended the staircase, the wood groaning under her steps, until she reached the railing above. And there, she stopped, her breath caught in her throat. Through the viewfinder, she saw something strange. The seats below didn't look empty. Not entirely. In the faint light, they looked filled. Shadows sat hunched, row after row, unmoving, as though watching the stage. She pulled the camera from her face. Empty. Just empty seats. Back through the viewfinder. Full. Her hands trembled as she stumbled back down. She didn't tell the others right away. She didn't have to. They all heard it next. A faint creak. The sound of rope tightening. From above the stage. They turned their lights upward. The catwalk stretched into darkness, wooden planks lined with old ropes and pulleys. None of them dared climb up, but the sound continued, like someone pulling on the ropes, readying the curtain. Then a piano. Soft, delicate notes drifted through the dust. A melody half-remembered, beautiful yet haunting. They spun in circles, lights sweeping across the seats, the aisles, the stage. There was no piano. The instrument had been removed decades ago. Still, the music played. One student whispered, "We're not alone." The temperature dropped. Their breath came out in clouds. Their cameras began to fail, batteries draining too quickly. In the darkened balcony, footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth. One of them, trying to prove bravery, called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a whisper carried across the theater. "The show is about to begin." Their flashlights flickered. For a brief second, the stage glowed, bathed in golden light, the kind you'd see on opening night. Dust became glitter. The curtains rippled, and faint outlines appeared. Actors in costume, their forms blurred, translucent. The theater was alive again, and the students realized, with a creeping horror, that they weren't documenting history. They were part of the performance. The golden glow didn't fade. It grew stronger. The theater breathed to life, as though time itself had folded in on the students, dragging them back into the past. Rows of seats filled with blurred faces, men in fedoras, women with feathered hats. Their eyes gleamed, though their features were hazy, like smoke caught in light. An audience, waiting, and on stage, the curtain rose. The students froze, their cameras trembling in their hands. They should have run, but something rooted them to the ground. A magnetic pull, a command unspoken. Watch. Actors stepped onto the stage. Their costumes were singed, blackened in patches, yet still glimmered faintly as they moved. Their mouths opened, but no words came, only the faint hiss of static. Still, the motions were perfect, a play unfolding as if rehearsed for centuries. One student whispered, "We're seeing the fire." The night it happened. Another shook his head. "No, we're seeing them still performing." The orchestra pit flickered alive, ghostly figures bowing phantom violins, striking invisible drums. The piano's haunting melody returned, weaving through the scene like a thread, pulling the living deeper into the story. Then came the smell. Smoke. Sharp, acrid, filling the lungs. One of the students coughed, waving their hands in front of their face. But there was no fire, no real smoke, only the memory of it. Still, their eyes watered. Their throats burned. The performance shifted. The actors stumbled, screamed silently, clutching at their costumes as faint sparks glowed on the set pieces. The fire was beginning again, and so was the panic. The audience of shadows stirred, restless in their seats. But they didn't run. They never ran. They sat and watched, their faces fixed forward, their hollow eyes glimmering with some cruel fascination. The students tried to move, to back away. But the aisle felt longer than it should, stretching into darkness that swallowed their steps. The exit doors loomed, but no matter how far they walked, they didn't get closer. One of them screamed, "It's not letting us leave." Their voices were drowned by the roar of phantom flames. The curtain above caught fire, glowing orange falling in embers. The ghostly cast collapsed one by one, their mouths open in screams that came out as static, their bodies writhing in rehearsed agony. And then silence. The stage went black. For a moment, the students thought it was over, that the nightmare had passed. But then a single spotlight flickered on, burning white in the center of the stage. It didn't shine on the ghosts. It shone on them. A voice echoed through the theater. Not an announcer, not an actor, something deeper, older. The show must go on. The ghostly audience leaned forward, their blurred faces suddenly sharp, eyes like coals fixed on the living. The students realized with dawning horror, they weren't just witnesses. They were the next performance. One of them dropped their camera and bolted down the aisle. Somehow, impossibly, the exit door opened for him. He didn't look back. The others weren't so lucky. The spotlight grew hotter, brighter. A force dragged them toward the stage, their bodies moving like marionettes on invisible strings. They screamed, their cries swallowed by the hiss of static, their forms flickering in and out like the ghosts before them. The stage welcomed its new cast, and as the curtain fell with a deafening thud, the last sound to echo in that hollow theater was applause. The next morning, Ashgrove Hollow stirred with rumors. The locals had seen lights burning in the theater the night before. Some swore they heard music drifting on the wind, piano keys, and muffled laughter. Others claimed they heard screams, faint but sharp, like someone calling for help and being drowned by applause. When the sheriff finally opened the doors, the theater was silent. Empty, dusty, as though no one had been there for decades. But in the center of the aisle, one camera lay cracked open. The lens shattered, the battery drained. The footage was corrupted. Static hissed across the tape, except for one frame. A single second of film where the balcony wasn't empty. A crowd of faces stared back, blurred but unmistakably human, their mouths open in frozen applause. And among them, three shapes that looked far too solid. Three of the students, staring forward, staring like the rest of the audience. Today, the Appalachian Haunted Theater still stands. Its doors chained, its windows boarded. Weeds grow higher than the ticket booth. But truckers passing at night still tell the same story. The marquee glows faintly. A whisper rides the fog, and if you roll your window down, you might hear it. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The performance is about to begin. Some say if you're unlucky enough to step inside, the theater decides whether you'll be an audience member or part of the cast. And the cruelest part? No one can tell the difference anymore. So the theater waits. Its curtains sway without wind. Its spotlight flickers on empty nights. And the applause, always the applause, rises from seats that should be empty. The show, after all, must go on. If you ever find yourself in a quiet Appalachian town and you see an abandoned theater with a broken marquee, don't go inside. But if you do, remember this. If the spotlight finds you, it may never let you go. Would you dare take a seat? If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more haunted legends from Appalachia, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you don't miss the next tale. Because in these mountains, the past is never truly gone, and some performances never end.